What's going on, guys? It's Brandon back here again today for the final power rankings concluding the 2023-24 NHL season. One moment. Sorry about that. Moving on. So we have 32 teams on the board in standing order as the NHL standings deem fit. We're going to see what I got right at the start of the season, what I got wrong, and just overall how every team finished comparatively speaking to where I expected them to be. So to start off at number 32, moving down one spot from the halfway point, 32nd overall at the start of the season was predicted, and they stayed in that exact same spot. The San Jose Sharks were worst in the league, to no one's surprise. And, miserable season for the Sharks. Most losses since the 2016-17 Colorado Avalanche. That team, I believe, had 48 points. I believe San Jose had 49 or 50. Off the top of my head, I don't recall. But the Sharks, it's only up from here. At least that's what you think. So we'll see if they improve at any point next season. Some of the young guys should be better, like Eklund and Bordelot should be getting full-time roles. Eklund was very good. Bordelot was good when he could be, among others as well. So we'll see how that goes for them. Moving up one spot from where they were at the halfway point, and moving down 3 spots from where I had them at the start of the year at 28th, the Blackhawks. Yeah, Chicago, losing Bedard for that 6-week stretch really hurt them. Kind of tanked any sort of ability they had to finish higher than that, which I don't mind. I'll gladly take a second overall pick if that's what the lottery wins us. But 28th overall at the start of the season, 31st isn't that far off. They finished 30th last year, so they actually went down a spot. So for the Blackhawks, we'll see if they can improve at any point. Davidson has now come out and said that he's ready to start building it up. They're not going to finish. They won't want to finish bottom 5 anymore. Of course, they're not going to make the playoffs next year or probably the year after. But after that, that's when you got to start. Okay, when Bedard's not going to be young forever, you're going to start paying him. We need to get this on the show on the road, and we saw that with some of the young guys. We got Bedard, Korchinski, Nazar. Looks like he's fully ready to be in the NHL. Some of the other defensemen that we picked up, like Rinzel, 25th overall pick. I'm not sure if he'll play next year, but should be getting somewhere. Comesso's coming up, so we'll see. We'll see. The future is bright for this team, so along with this year's pick. 30th overall last year, 30th overall this year, 30th predicted at the start of the season, 32nd in the league last year, and at the same spot I had them at the halfway point. Everything's the same about the Anaheim Ducks. What they do with Ziegler is going to be the thing this offseason. At this point, I really don't know what they're going to do. Of course, Adam Henrique's been traded off. One of the longtime Stales guys on that roster has finally moved on. He's with the Oilers now, and Silverberg is also retiring, so it's going to definitely ushering in a new era. Silverberg was kind of the last piece of that last core. Getzlaf's retired. Perry's in Edmonton as well, but I get the idea. John Gibson and Silverberg are kind of the only two left. Gibson, whether he gets moved, we'll see. Silverberg's retiring. Ducks should still be bad next year. Of course, a high pick would not go along to help. Leo Carlsson should be he's looked fantastic when he has played. And speaking of top picks, moving down one spot from where I had them at the halfway point. Had them at 26 to start the year, -3 there. So at 29th, we have Columbus, who, when Fantilli played, he looked pretty good. Injury problems hit all top three picks this season. And for, of course, I forgot to mention Will Smith for San Jose. But for Columbus, Fantilli, Vorokov, Chinikov, a couple Russians there, along with their established veterans like Werenski, should help lead this team out of something. Because Columbus right now, yeah, Johnny Gaudreau, you're paying $9.75 million a year, and out of, I think he got 10 goals this year, something like that. Not good enough. Columbus has always been the basement, and aside from that, those 2 playoff series wins in 2019 and 2020, they really haven't done much other than that. Of course, they committed to the greatest and hilarious upsets, but that overall, that's not what you want out of a market that's already small in competition-wise, and one that might have another team in the state soon. And the way expansion's going in the NHL, say Cincinnati does come in, do people flock from Columbus to Cincinnati, if that's the case? Moving down 6 spots from where I had them at the halfway point. Had them at 29th to start the year, however, so they move up 1 spot from where I expected them to be, and that's the Montreal Canadiens. Montreal didn't have any expectation this year. They finished last 2 years ago. They get Slavkovsky. They finished, I think, bottom 5 last year. And they picked up, who did they get? No, they weren't bottom 5, I don't think. They got Reinbacher at 5th. That's who it was. So we'll see if he starts to come into the lineup next season. And they got some other guys that are coming up as well. Of course, they trade off Jake Allen, so whether Montembeault or Primo, that's probably going to be the tandem next year, you would think. Then again, things change. Guys like it's going to be a wonder who stays on this team, because you got guys like Gallagher and Josh Anderson, and I know they've already moved off some pieces. They didn't do much at the trade down that I can recall. They traded away Jake Allen, but besides that, it's going to be about the young guys. Suzuki, Caulfield didn't have as good of a year, I think, as expected. He still had 22 goals-ish, I think, around that point. Suzuki was phenomenal. But for the Canadians, it's all about building back up. And right now, it looks like they're doing decently with it. Of course, with the Atlantic as powerhouse as it is right now, staying bad right now means when the other teams get bad, they have a chance to rise to the top. They're moving down 13 spots, and for the last time ever on this power rankings board, -2. They were at minus 13 spots from where I had them at the halfway point, which was around 14th. They were 25th predicted to start the season. They ended up dropping 2 spots to 27th from where I predicted them. The Arizona Coyotes, soon to be the not Salt Lake City, they're going to be called the Utah something. And all those guys are going to Utah. And it's unfortunate, but the Coyotes will be back. At least Marillo says they'll be back. And I want the Coyotes to come back. So I'm excited for when they do come back, because I have 2 Coyotes jerseys, and I don't want to have 2 jerseys that I can't really wear anymore. But for the Coyotes, last hurrah. If they made the playoffs this year, maybe something would have changed, but in the end, it couldn't get done. Hopefully in 4 years-ish, they come back and things get better. Among that, Clayton Keller was pretty good. Logan Cooley's pretty good. Josh Doan, when he played, was pretty good, and it's such a shame. He scores his first plays finally in the team his father played for, and now he's moving to Utah. Overall, I hope that's all situated and fixed. That's really not about the on-ice with the Coyotes. The on-ice product's all right. That 14-game losing streak kind of killed their playoff momentum, because they were in the playoffs, and then they lost 14 in a row. But hopefully they don't do that next year and are somewhat competitive until the last days of the season, because then they fell all the way to bottom 6th in the league. And a high pick should definitely help that. Moving up 1 spot from where I had them at the halfway point, minus 10 spots from where I had them to start the year. A complete disappointment at 26 for the Ottawa Senators. What is there to do? Pierre Dorian's gone, so the new GM was gonna have some stuff to do. That's in what's his name? I completely forgot the Ottawa Senators GM name. My apologies. And for the Senators, what they do this offseason, if they're gonna make big changes, of course, they get a full year of Shane Pinto next year. But what I'd consider is, I'm not going to go into gambling, my personal views of it, but I'm going to say Pinto should not have been suspended 41 games. I don't know what exactly he was accused of, or what was found out about. If he's betting on hockey games, that's completely understandable why they suspend him that long. If he's not betting on hockey games, I don't understand what the issue is. But we're not going to get into that. For the Senators, complete failure every year. Just like for this next team. Moving down 10 spots from where they were at the halfway point. So they were in the mix, and then they just fell off. Everything just fell to crap. And I had them finishing 2nd overall in the league this year after last season. Minus 22 spots. The biggest failure on the board goes to the New Jersey Devils. Congratulations. Round of applause. Toffoli's gone. Toffoli's gone. You've revamped your entire goaltending, whether you keep Jake Allen or Kaapo Kähkönen, we'll see. Hughes, Hischier, Meyer, Bratt, looks like they're going to be back, and that's all you. Those are your core 4 right there. A much less expensive core 4, let's say the least, but they cannot happen again. This team expects to be back in the playoffs next season. They went out and got Toffoli. Although he was good, and they got a return for him, although not as good as I expected it to be, it definitely leaves a sour taste in a lot of fans' mouths who definitely predict. I can't really think of anyone who predicted the Devils to be out of the playoffs this season, and here they are as a bottom 8 team in the league. Back to getting draft picks. Here we go. If they even have their first round pick this year, who knows if they traded it off last year? They probably do. They definitely should if they don't. Now, staying in the exact same spot I had them in to start the year, or no, they were 10th. I had them at the start of the year. They moved down 14 spots to 24th by the end of it, and they're in the same spot they were in at the halfway point. The definition of mediocrity in the Seattle Kraken. So you get 60 points your first year, you get 100 points your second year, and then you get 80 points your third year. You meet right in the middle. They underachieved year 1, overachieved year 2. This is about what they are. Shane Wright, though, did look good in his come up, so hopefully you can establish some sort of stardom there, because that's what Seattle really lacks. They lack a true star. And hopefully they get bounced back into the playoffs. Unfortunately, the Pacific Division is getting better. You have Edmonton next year, who's always going to make the playoffs, and they proved that with the start they had this year. The Kings are consistently making it. The Vegas, of course, for how long that is. You got Vancouver, who's finally lived up to potential, though we'll get there. And you got, to be fair, Seattle could make the playoffs because there's only 4 Pacific teams that made it this year, and Calgary looks like they're going in the opposite direction. So speaking of Calgary, moving up 3 spots, and I had them finishing 22nd. They finished 23rd from where they were at the start of the year, and that's the Flames. For you, they moved off Hanifin, they moved off Tanev. Kind of all the guys that they had are just kind of gone. I'm surprised Mangiapane's still there, but then again, he's all right. Only guys that are left are Kadri and Huberdeau from their massive deals. And so they traded off Toffoli at the start of the year. Tanev and Hanifin are gone. I'm surprised Markstrom wasn't gone because he was playing pretty well. But Calgary, whether they go into a retool or whether they go into a rebuild, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Backlund, of course, has been re-signed, so he'll be sticking around. It's kind of the core of Backlund, Kadri, and Huberdeau, which is an older core. And an older core with a team not making the playoffs is an issue. Markstrom is getting up there as well. But for Calgary, what they do from here, I'm expecting them kind of to start bottoming out over the next couple seasons. They should definitely be moving down, while their teams on the right side should be moving up. So we'll see if Calgary can, what they'll do here overall. Now, another disappointment. Moving up 8 spots from where they were at the halfway point. They had an atrocious start. However, I had them finishing 13th, so they're down 9 spots from where I had them at the start of the year. The Buffalo Sabres were supposed to make the playoffs this year. I had them making the playoffs this year. That's the second team on the board I had making the playoffs. And, actually third, because I had Seattle in as well. And they didn't. They absolutely did not. They kind of came back at the end of the season, but they needed a lot to go right, and in the last week they were out of it. So for Buffalo, after just missing it by 1 point last year, they missed it by about 5, 6, 7 points this year. 13 seasons without playoffs for Buffalo. My brother wasn't alive the last time Buffalo made the playoffs, which is unbelievable to me. And considering he's almost done with middle school, to say the least. And so the Sabres, last time they won a playoff series was 2007. I believe now they're the longest team that hasn't won a playoff series since Florida won 2 years ago. Toronto won last year. Yeah, it should be Buffalo. Buffalo is probably the last team that on this board that hasn't won a playoff series. Everyone has won one since then, I believe, if I'm looking at it right. And Minnesota has. Yeah, they've truly just hit rock bottom in terms of how anyone. If you're a fan of the Buffalo Sabres, I apologize. Of course, they trade off a Poso at the deadline to finally get him somewhere. He's not playing much in Florida, but at least get something back. Like getting anything back for a miserable season, I would take as many picks as I can get, or whatever I can get for that, along with trading off Eric Johnson to Philadelphia. That's a solid move there. 21st overall, a team that shouldn't have been very good, and yet ended up 21st, plus I had them finishing 31st at the start of the year. It looked like they were going into a rebuild. Danny Briere said they were going into a rebuild, which tells you it's the Philadelphia Flyers. They moved down 12 spots. They were at 9th at the halfway point. They ended up at 21st, as did a lot of the Metro Division. The Metro Division and the East overall, when it came down to the wire, that was a bizarre finish. I really wanted the Flyers to get in. I was not a fan of the Flyers. I was hoping they'd get in just to see what the uproar would be, and Tortorella would definitely win Coach of the Year then, because they didn't. and especially how they eliminated Detroit horrifically in my eyes. I wanted either Philadelphia, Detroit, or Pittsburgh to get in, and none of those three teams got in. Instead, it was Islanders and Washington. So that's just exactly how I wanted it to happen. But for Philadelphia, definitely showed what they have, what they do in the offseason now that they were supposed to be rebuilding, and instead they're kind of just mediocre, which is worse. And so for the Flyers, good season? Question mark. I don't really know what to do there. All right, moving up one spot from where I had them at the halfway point, and also moving up one spot from where I had them at the start of the year. The Minnesota Wild, finally their cap troubles caught up to them, as I expected. I'd expected this for a couple years now, but yet now Minnesota finally decides, okay, we're ready to fall out. They had good players. Kaprizov, Rossi, Boldy, three good guys there. Got some guys on defense. Spurgeon's looking good. Brodeen's always been reliable back there. It's all about now, once those cap penalties, they're going to have a ton of cap space to work with. I think it's one more year of this $14 million, and they should start building up, and they should be a pretty good team when they do, because they're young, and they've got guys in net that are also, you got Gustafsson in net. Wallstedt looked good when he came up, and I believe they have another guy in there as well, who's also, so Minnesota's all of a sudden got some goalies to work with. So it's a young team with a guy like Kaprizov as your star, as a veteran. Zuccarello is getting older, so if he'll be around when they finally get it, we'll see. But Minnesota's got, I'd say, a brighter future than some say. Moving up, underrated future. Moving up 4 spots from where I had them at the halfway point, and moving down 5 spots from where I had them at the start of the year. The Pittsburgh Penguins. You trade off Getzel, you get Bunning, you almost make the playoffs, and you barely miss the playoffs. That sounds about the worst possible scenario for Kyle Dubas and the Pittsburgh Penguins. What do? Crosby's probably getting extended. Letang's locked up, Malkin's locked up, Rust is locked up. You can't really go into a rebuild here, and if you do, that's going to piss a lot of the core off. Carlson, of course, is there until 2027. I have no clue what Pittsburgh's going to do. I have no clue where they'll finish next season. I have no clue what to say about this team, because it's kind of just, when you hear all of it come at you at once, it's just, what could you possibly do if you're Kyle Dubas? And judging how he was with the Maple Leafs, run it back. Jeff Carter's retiring. That's some cap space back. You get some Lars Eller's getting up there as well. If you get some retirements, some of those contracts up, and hopefully you get guys like Braden Yeager in the lineup. Of course, he was 13th overall. Probably not going to be ready next year. Might play a few games at the end of next season, but we'll see, because Pittsburgh doesn't have prospects. They don't have a lot. They don't have a lot right now, and they're kind of in the worst position possible, where they're not good enough to make the playoffs and good enough to not suck completely. Another East team, moving up one spot from where they were at the halfway point, and exactly where I expected them to be at the start of the season. The Detroit Red Wings finished 18th. What happens to Patrick Kane? I'm very interested. Nothing much to say here. They should have got in. They tied with Washington in points, and yet they lost the tiebreaker, and it sucks. For me, if they got in, it would be considered a huge success for Detroit. And now that it's not, when you got guys like Ben Sherratt, Justin Hall, and Jeff Petrie on your lineup, there are questions for Steve Yzerman. Why you signed Justin Hall to that contract is mind-boggling. Why you picked up Jeff Petrie is kind of bizarre when you have Goss to spare. And, a lot of questions for this Detroit team. And they almost made the playoffs. Moving down one spot from where I had them previously, moving up 10 spots from where I had them at the start of the year, and finished in the wild card 2 spot at 17th, which is similar to what the Panthers did last year. The Washington Capitals, although down 2-0 to the Rangers already, the Capitals are happy to be here. Ovechkin just had a remarkable second half of the season, and he's going to catch Gretzky. I think in the next, if he catches him next year, that means he has a hell of a season. More likely the next 2 seasons he'll catch Gretzky, and then he'll probably be done. I think he'll hit 900 goals, and once that season's over, he'll be done. For the Capitals, they got it. The fact that they got in is remarkable, considering where they were at the start of the season. And it's a team that I don't think is coming back. This is a team that I don't think is coming back. When your best players are Charlie Lindgren and a very old Alex Ovechkin, and Sonny Milano has looked good as well. But I don't know what this team does. I have zero clue what this team does as well. Washington, Pittsburgh are kind of just in the screwed area going forward. That's all I can say. Moving up 9 spots, yet they missed the playoffs in the top 16. So you got the St. Louis Blues, who kind of got hosed. They were at 9th. They were up. They were down at 19. That's not spout. They were in 25th at the halfway point. They move up to 16th. They are +1 from where I expected them. I expected them to finish 17th. I expected the Blues to also finish in the playoffs. So what we have here is 1, 2, no, not 2. That's 2, 3, 4, 5 teams I expected in the playoffs. So 11 for 16, I'll take it. Everyone here on out is at the playoffs, and I didn't call them being in the playoffs, but they were, such as Washington. So for St. Louis, that's frustrating. They were close to catching Vegas because Vegas almost fell off, but in reality, I think it's time for St. Louis to have a look and see what they can do, because they got guys in their prime like Kyrou and Thomas and Binnington, yet they don't really have enough of a supporting cast to support a cup-winning team. So what St. Louis does is kind of similar to Washington and Pittsburgh, just in a different way. I'm not sure what they do from here. Moving down 4 spots, and another team I can't believe made the playoffs. Moving up 5 spots from where I had them at the start of the season at 20th. Finished 3rd in the Metropolitan, the New York Islanders. This team was miserable at the start of the season. Lane Lambert gets fired, Patrick Waugh comes in, they somehow make the playoffs, and they're down 2-0 to Carolina after blowing a 3-0 lead in the final 10 minutes of Game 2. So for the Islanders, it looks like they're going to be a quick exit. Sorokin's going in Game 3, so who knows. But overall, Capitals and Islanders are teams that shouldn't have been in the playoffs, that I would have probably replaced with the Red Wings and the Flyers, or Red Wings and Penguins. Penguins have been similar to the Capitals at least, but the Red Wings, I would have rather much had them than the Islanders. Just overall, it's kind of unfortunate that these two teams got in, especially when the Islanders are just kind of boring to watch. And so are the Capitals, to be fair. Moving down 9 spots from where I had them at the start of the season. I had them finishing 11th. They're down 3 spots at 14th, but the wild card 2 is Vegas. And they beat Dallas in Game 1. Vegas is the defending champion. They're a dangerous team still. And not that much to say about Vegas. They brought in, of course, what people are going to say. I've gone over it in videos. It's not cheating if it's not in the rules. Of course, people are going to say, yeah, you're Vegas bandwagon. Yeah, keep telling yourself that. Hurdle has looked good. So you don't fake a ruptured spleen. Sorry those who say that Mark Stone faked a ruptured spleen. Well, the fact that he's good for Game 1 of the playoffs, tough luck. Mantha's not really contributed much. He hasn't played a lot. And Hannafin looked all right on the blue line. No issue there. Thompson and Hill, not his world. Hill not starting in the playoffs as he did last year. Said Thompson's going to start Game 2. If Dallas wins Game 2, do they go to Hill as a 1A, 1B situation like in Boston's doing with Swayman and Ullmark? Who knows, but we'll see. Moving up 5 spots from where I had them at the halfway point. Moving down 6 spots from where I had them at the start of the year at 7th. In the wild card, 1 spot in the East, you have Tampa Bay. And the Lightning, they're down 2-0 to Florida, although it's been 2 very close, very good games. And the core is getting older. You got guys like Stamkos, Hedman are getting up there. Kucherov's kind of in his early 30s. Vasilevsky's still young enough. And so are guys like Sergachev and Hagel, Cirelli. It's kind of like Dallas where they're in a mix in between eras, which is a very good thing. That's the best time to win. What's funny is they weren't really in that when they were winning the Cups. But for Tampa, they're in a mix in between eras, and at least that means they'll have something to go off of when guys like Stamkos hasn't been signed yet. I assume he will be, but of course, that's going to be a question this offseason. Now moving down 4 spots are the LA Kings from where I had them at the halfway point, and moving down 6 spots from where I had them at the start of the year at 6th. Kings make the playoffs, and they get kind of walloped by Edmonton in Game 1 there. But overall, the Dubois trade kind of sucked. And, I mean, they're in the same exact spot they've been the last 2 years, no matter what. And after losing 7-4 in Game 1, who knows, if they come back in Game 2 and win, all's well. If they don't, they're kind of like I predicted, and Edmonton wins in 5, and that'll be 3 straight years in outs by the Oilers. And the bright side, Byfield has looked much better. 20 goals this season. Very nice. He's going to be a good player. Not much to say about the Kings. 1-3-1. You could say that about the Kings. Moving up 6 spots is the Nashville Predators from where they were at the halfway point. And moving up 13 spots from where I had them at the start of the year. Wild Card 1. Of course, the Kings were 3rd in the Pacific. Wild Card 1 finished higher in Nashville. Had them at 24th to start the year because they looked like they were going to retool. They bring in O'Reilly, they bring in Nyquist, they bring in Luke Schenn, and guys like Duchesne, Johansson of the old core are out. Forsberg's still around, which is good because he had a phenomenal year. Nashville's just somehow finding ways to win. They had that stretch where they went 16-0-2. They win Game 2 in Vancouver after losing Game 1, and with Demko down, Nashville has an opportunity here to win. And if they win, they'll play the winner of Edmonton and LA. If they play Edmonton, if they play LA, they got a good chance. But for Nashville, definitely an underdog story right here. That's coming to fruition. Moving up 2 spots from where I had them at the halfway point. Moving down 7 spots from where I had them at the start of the season at 3rd. The Toronto Maple Leafs are starting their 3rd game of the series in about 2.5 hours. And they're tied 1-1 against Boston after coming home from Boston, which is a good sign. I think for Toronto, that was very important to get 1 game in Boston. It's always important to get 1 game when you're not at home. But coming home, we'll see if Toronto can pull off something they haven't done since 1959, and that's beat Boston. Because that seems like it's kind of the final boss. They lose to Boston in 2013. They have to go through a rebuild then. They get Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, which Tavares was around for 2018. But 2019, they lose in 7 a couple times, so they got to come back around. It's like, we'll revisit this later. They have to go through trying to win a round. They lose to Columbus and Montreal and Tampa, and then they get Tampa again, which they defeat that demon last year. And then they play Boston as the final boss. If they can beat Boston, they have a kind of a shot at winning something here. And then they got the Panthers, which would be their other final boss. Because you've already beaten Tampa. If you can beat Boston, that just leaves Florida. And then you're kind of into an era. You're in an area you haven't been in since 2002 when you lost to the Hurricanes in 6. Which could very well happen again this year if the Hurricanes do beat them in 6 in the conference final. But for the Leafs, I'd be very excited if I was a Leafs fan for this year because next year, although the cap goes up by $4 million, Nylander's taking up that space, and then Matthews is going to make $2 million more. So how you afford anything right now is kind of driving me nuts, and the way that I really don't know how you're doing it when you got $50 million invested in like 5 players. Moving up 12 spots from where I had them at the halfway point after their abysmal start. The Edmonton Oilers, who I had finishing 5th, they ended up finishing 9th, so -4. But from the start they had, it was just awful, and they finally got Stuart Skinner going. Calvin Pickard, my legend, has been one of the saving graces for this team. Hyman has been fantastic, playing with McDavid, who's of course fantastic. Draisaitl, fantastic. And Evander Kane, he had a solid season. I think he had 20 goals, 44 points-ish. So, I got Warren Fogel's finally playing like how he was in Carolina. Don't mind the voice crack. So their top 6 is loaded. Their bottom 6 has looked all right. Their 7-4 winning Game 1 looked dominant. And Oilers have a chance this year. It's another year. I had them winning it all last year. Could they win it all this year? It would be a great time to do so since Draisaitl's up next year. But, yeah, Oilers doing usual Oiler things, which would have been something else, which had a completely different meaning 10 years ago, because they were just absolute dog water. Moving down 1 spot from where they were at the halfway point, and exactly where I predicted them at the start of the season. 3rd in the Central is Colorado. Of course, Toronto's 3rd in the Atlantic, Edmonton's 2nd in the Pacific. Colorado's dangerous. They win Game 2. I have them losing to Winnipeg. After Game 1, I was kind of concerned after that 7-6 shootout that was going on, and then a 5-2 win in Game 2. Without Landeskog, it's been difficult for the Avalanche, but they've been able to go out and get guys. The guys have stepped right in, Jonathan Drouin being one of them. Zach Parise has looked good when he's played, to be fair, scoring a goal last night in that game. McKinnon is world beater. Rantanen's phenomenal. Makar's phenomenal. Tays, loaded defense. Georgiev or Gorgiev, I still don't know how to pronounce his name even after watching him. I don't remember what they said. Georgiev has been... he's been something. He had a good game last night, but that might be something Colorado addresses if they can during the offseason. Now moving down 3 spots from where they were at the halfway point. I keep saying to say start of the season because I'm used to saying that. I had them finishing 15th and out of the playoffs. They ended up finishing 7th and in the playoffs, as well as 2nd in the Atlantic. Plus 8 from where I had them at the start of the season if I can get the magnet off the board. And a team that just doesn't want to die, kind of like how it's gripping by the white waist-side of the board. The Bruins find ways to have no number 1 center, no number 2, debatably 2 number 2 centers, and still find a way to just dominate. After that Game 1 win in Toronto, I was worried they were going to whip Toronto. Toronto comes back in Game 2, good stuff. After having lost Bergeron and Krejci, you think this team falls off finally after they lost Chara previously. No, they keep finding ways to win. Zakov steps forward and plays phenomenal with Pasternak and whoever's on the line, whether it's DeBrusk, whether it's Charlie Coyle can play up and down. Who knew that just the depth that this team has? Although they have a lot of middle 6 depth, bottom 6 depth, they come in, they can go up and down the lineup, and it works. And as well as their defensive core, you got McAvoy that's leading the charge there. And who could forget that 2-headed monster in net, Ullmark and Swayman? So Ullmark might be probably gone judging by the fact he was almost moved at the deadline this season. But how Boston doesn't have cap space kind of confuses me, because it seems like Boston doesn't invest a lot in many players. Pasternak's making 11-something million. And then who else is really making money? Was McAvoy? Is he making like $9 million even? Like, I'm not sure how this team's in cap trouble when Toronto, who is also doing this, who knows? Now, 6th, moving down 4 spots from where I had them at the halfway point. I had them finishing 19th and in the playoffs. I had them finishing in the playoffs. Expected them barely getting in rather than what happened here. Plus 13, first in the Pacific, the Vancouver Canucks. This is finally the Canucks team that I expected to get for the past couple of years. I expected them to be in the playoffs. This is what the youth is found, like developing. Pettersson, Besser, Hughes, up front, and just overall. Of course, you got guys like Miller, who's an older guy, had 100 points. Not older, but late 20s. Tyler Myers' contract is finally up, and they're finally good. Who would have thought? And the Canucks are finally. I can't believe they finally lived up to what I expected them to be. Although their second half was concerning. Game 2 without Demko was concerning. If they lose this series, oh boy. But for Vancouver, it's good for them to be back in the playoffs. First home playoff game in 9 years since they weren't at home in the 2020 playoffs, which was also kind of a flash in the pan. Like, they made the playoffs, everyone's like, okay, they're finally good now, and then they're not. Moving down 2 spots from where I had them at the halfway point. Moving up 18 spots from where I had them at the start of the season. I had them at 23rd. They finished 5th with 2nd in the Central, the Winnipeg Jets. What a story. And they bring in Monahan and Toffoli to only add to their core. They extend Scheifele and Hellebuck after not knowing what's going to happen with this team. They got rid of Wheeler and Dubois. Hate that guy. And everything just clicked. They go out and get Monahan, then they go out and get Toffoli. Things have just worked in Winnipeg this season, and no one really saw this coming, to be fair. Right to the end there, in competition for first in the Central, that Dallas kind of pulled away at the end, but just a brilliant performance by the Jets. And it wasn't even, they didn't even have a dominant scorer. Scheifele was their leading scorer in the 70s. It's just all by committee. And Hellebuck standing on his head, of course. But, yeah. Moving up 6 spots from where I had them at the halfway point. Moving up 8 spots from where I had them at the start of the season. The Florida Panthers win the Atlantic Division. And good on them. Bobrovsky has been playing fantastic. After seeing Game 2, he was fantastic. So was Vasilevsky. Very good goaltending matchup in that series. But after losing in the final last year, they're out for blood, as a Panther is. And you got guys like Kachuk. Reinhardt's a UFA, and he's going to make some big money if they re-sign him. I'll be amazed. Barkov hasn't really been visible because I'm not sure if he's been playing. I haven't really paid huge attention to the series as a whole. I've just kind of been watching them. Has Barkov been playing? I really don't remember hearing his name. Of course, Bennett now I've seen is out for possibly the series. We'll see. Of course, they're going to Tampa now. If Tampa turns this around, they have the ability to. They've been there, done that. So for Florida, it's all about coming back and finally beating their demons in the Lightning. and then they get to face the winner of Boston and Toronto, which is not something I would enjoy going through that gauntlet of the Atlantic in the second round. Moving up 10 spots from where they were at the halfway point, definitely turned around from the start. +1 from where I had them at the start of the year at 4th. Second in the Metro is the Carolina Hurricanes. And for Carolina, they're odds-on favorites to win the Cup this year. And what else do you need? Their goaltending's been brilliant since Anderson came back. Kachenkov's held down the fort. They had that huge comeback in Game 2 after being down 3-0 with 10 minutes to go. They score 5, including 2 in 9 seconds. And for the Hurricanes, it's all or nothing this year. Guys are going to be gone after this year, like Pesci, most likely gone. Teravainen's a UFA. Aranta, at least, will be gone. That'll save them some money. But Kachenkov, I'm not sure if he needs to be paid or not as well. So Carolina's in that situation the Hawks was, except Hawks had won some Stanley Cups, and Carolina right now has not. And it's good they're bound to this season if they. This might be one of those years where it might be their best chance to do it. Now finishing first in the West and first in the East, Rangers edge out the President's Trophy there, but Dallas and the Rangers. Dallas, I had finishing first with the President's Trophy. I was one spot off. I've been so good at predicting the President's Trophy winner recently, and I was so close. -1 from where I had them at the start of the season, and what is there to say about Dallas? They're up 4 spots from where they were at the halfway point. They got the best top 9 in the league, possibly. Defenses look solid. Somehow lose Game 1. And Ottinger and Net should be stable, and Wedgwood's a solid backup. They're a very complete team that's in between eras like Tampa, except they're a younger team than Tampa is, so that makes them even more dangerous. The Rangers, similar scenario. They got Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, guys who are late 20s, early 30s in a core, but also guys are developing like Lafreniere, Keandre Miller. Kakko is not developed. And Lafreniere, of course, had a pretty good season. He's still calling him a bust. I don't think he is. But, the Rangers win the President's Trophy, and they're up 2-0 on the Capitals. Shouldn't have an issue taking them out the rest of the series. But, that's how my predictions went this season. That's how the power rankings end. That's going to be all I have for you guys on this one, as I've been rambling for about 37 minutes now. It's hard to believe it's been that long. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I shall see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.